Unscripted.
Both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X have been available for a while now. Although not everyone who wants one has been able to actually acquire one, they have both been technically on the market since November of 2020. Now, in the build-up prior to launch, there were a lot of things said by a lot of different people, and most were claiming an early victory for the Xbox Series X on the sheer power that the console would possess alone. Microsoft got the early jump on Sony by officially unveiling the Xbox Series X at the Video Game Awards in 2020, surprising everyone in the process, showcasing a very unique if uninspiring design console and showcasing some impressive and mature in-engine CGI of Hellblade 2 from recently acquired Ninja Theory. It looked fantastic and people were talking for months. Now, right away people were speculating just how powerful the console would be, and Sony was rather quiet for months and months, and in fact Sony had actually had a round of suspicious layoffs and changes of top management coming off the complete and utter destruction that the PlayStation 4 levied against the Xbox One, so it was quite surprising for everyone to see. Unfortunately, the world was hit with a pandemic and things changed almost right away. We weren't going to be able to get big events detailing new games, and there wasn't going to be live shows with live reactions anymore. What we got from Sony was a fairly boring deep dive into the PlayStation 5 via head market architect Mark Cerny. Now, it was interesting if you're into technology, but people were speculating that the PlayStation 5 wouldn't stack up against the mighty Xbox Series X. Now, fast forward in June of 2020, Phil Spencer himself said that the hardware advantages that the Xbox Series X would have against the PlayStation 5 would quote-unquote show up. It was a bold and ambitious prediction to say the least. Pro Xbox YouTubers and influencers alike found themselves in a position of being an insider, or at the very least in a position of knowledge. And how did they use this? Well, they used it to spread misinformation in various ways about how much more powerful the Xbox Series X would be than the PlayStation 5, setting unrealistic ideas and thoughts running through gamers' minds everywhere. It was truly a David and Goliath situation on our hands, and once these consoles finally dropped, Digital Foundry and other companies would actually do comparisons, and they would do side-by-side comparisons, and that would surely cement the enormous victories in favor of Microsoft's mighty new monster eater. Or would it? Alas, this was not meant to be. Right away, the PlayStation 5 was outperforming the Xbox Series X. So much so that influencers and YouTubers had to make foolish excuses as to why this was happening in the first place. It shouldn't be possible, right? Yet here it was. The PlayStation 5 was punching above its weight and delivering knockout after knockout after knockout to the allegedly vastly more powerful Xbox Series X. Now, we got a glimpse of the Xbox Series X flagship new title, Halo Infinite. This game supposedly costs upwards of $500 million to create, and there's literally thousands of developers working on the game. 343 Industries has had a bit of a rough go of things lately. Halo 5 was the worst selling in the main Halo game series, and it was also the lowest scoring in the mainline Halo series. And while Halo 4 had seen a pretty fantastic campaign, Halo 5 had what is regarded as the worst campaign in Halo history. So 343 were also to blame for the lackluster Master Chief Collection, which lay broken for many years until 2017, when Microsoft finally decided to have them fix lingering issues. But not because we've been asking for years for them to fix it, but because they lack content to launch a $550 Xbox One X 4K console monster. And so they had to dig deep into the past to update old games so that we would feel like we were getting our money's worth. Hype had been set. Microsoft was hot on the comeback trail. Everyone was talking about Halo Infinite and how it was going to be a true game changer and bring Halo back to the forefront of people's minds and back to the top of the first-person shooter genre. And when we got to look at the game for the first time, it looked nothing like we were promised. It looked like a late-generation Xbox 360 game. This is the franchise, the tentpole franchise, that Microsoft was going to win the next console war with, and yet the game looked worse than some in the community had modded themselves. They were actually modded Halo games that looked far superior than what we were seeing. We did get some new screenshots from 343 recently, but even those tend to offer a bit of a plastic looking game in the making. I'm not sure why this is the case, but if you go back and look at the original screenshots that we saw, the game looks very plastic, almost toy-like, and even through the updates, you know, we still doesn't look like it should. It doesn't look like a great Halo game. This is supposed to be Microsoft's baby. This is supposed to be the absolute top of the best of the best of the best. And it just isn't. Halo Infinite is supposed to be the be-all, end-all when it comes to showcasing the power of the Xbox Series X. We're supposed to be blown away by how amazing this looks. These are top-tier developers at the top of their craft. So why does it all look so average after 6 years of development? You have to sort of ask yourself these questions, and who's really to blame? Meanwhile, at newly acquired Insomniac Games, they showcased a game in development as well, a work in progress on the much less powerful PlayStation 5 console from Sony. Yet what we saw was an absolute thing of beauty. A studio that had managed to release 5 games since Halo 5 launched was also managing to outwork 343 and create a breathtaking exclusive game that really showcased what the console could actually do. We were seeing a 60 frames mode, a 4K mode, particle effects, and ray tracing in this game. How is it that they can fit all of that into a Ratchet and Clank game, but we can't even get ray tracing or trees that look realistic in a Halo game with a budget of $500 million? You really have to scratch your head at the thought. If you're Microsoft, you must be realizing at this point that you're in some trouble. Is it the fact that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is built specifically for the PlayStation 5? Is it that the old hardware is keeping Halo down? Who's exactly to blame for this troubling and disturbing situation? Microsoft and their followers spent more than a year building up the Xbox Series X as the ultimate machine for gaming. Everything was going to look and play best on it. Yet how come Microsoft's billion-dollar franchise looks like a shell of its former self? Who's to blame for this hype, this misinformation, the misdeeds? Well, it's a blame that falls on Microsoft, of course. Obviously Phil Spencer as well. And we also can't let the influencers off the hook either. Surely they have a lot to gain by keeping people excited about the Xbox. It's a little-known secret that people do not like to talk about, but when you're getting free swag, you don't want to lose that, and you don't want to lose out on being in Microsoft's good graces. It's really a culmination of things. How can a third-person action-adventure shooter like Ratchet & Clank thoroughly outshine Microsoft and their unlimited money and resources? Now that is a question for the ages for certain. Not only does Halo look inferior to Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, but so far every game that Microsoft has showcased, which hasn't really been much, has been outshone by what Sony has put forth. Obviously, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is a game that's being built specifically for the PlayStation 5, and that does help matters. But at the end of the day, you have to have that passion, you have to have that leadership, you have to have those goals, and you have to have that want and that will to really be there for the gamer. In the meantime, we can all marvel at how such a charming game like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart seemingly looks far better than anything Microsoft has shown us on their 12 teraflop monster-eating console. For me personally, it puts a lot of things into perspective. One of which is that passion and great leadership will outdo money every single time. If Microsoft had put more thought into what they were doing, we might have seen a different result. But sometimes pleasing board members has to take a backseat to pleasing actual gamers and giving them a reason to trust you and believe in your brand and believe in your product. I realize both of these games are still a work in progress, but I fully suspect when they release these products that we will continue to show better for Ratchet and Clank. And in the meantime, it looks like Halo is quite possibly on its last leg as a franchise. Don't put it past you if you see heavy shakeups at 343 Industries if Halo Infinite fails to impress people. I think we could be looking at something like that in the near future, and what a debacle that would be for Microsoft. But I do suspect that people like Bonnie Ross will be gone and that there was going to be massive shakeups there. How will Halo Infinite turn out? I'm not exactly sure how it's going to turn out. We all have to just sit back and wait. I think a lot of things are going to take into consideration. How will the game score on Metacritic? How will reviewers rate this game? How's it going to look when we actually get to see it? So far, we've seen PC footage, and that's what we've seen here. But why are we seeing PC footage? Why haven't we been able to see real Xbox Series X footage? And why haven't we seen any real Xbox exclusives running specifically on the Xbox Series X. It's almost as if Microsoft is afraid to showcase the console that they spent a year plus hyping up. Now, that is a little bit concerning. At the end of the day, to have Ratchet and Clank outshine your most prestigious, amazing billion-dollar franchise is a sad thing indeed. Let me know what you guys think. I'm Crapgamer. This is Crapgamer Reviews. Rack 'em up. Out.
Unscripted.